Greetings, groovy people! This is the self-proclaimed Blue Dragon. Welcome to my channel. Thanks to my new subscribers. I super appreciate that. Thank you so much. And I'm gonna get right into it. This video here, inking, because it's Inktober and I ink anyway. Nothing new there. But this is, here's looking at you, kid. But not kid because of the whole YouTube thing that I've talked about going on. No kids. Okay, I'm demonetized. I don't have any money anyway. I don't get money from this. I'm inking an image of Kana from my free webcomic Dark Horse. Links are below, as are links to all my, support stuff. Yeah, so this is actually taking place in real time. I mean, like, it's not live, but like, this inking, I didn't have to time-lapse it because it wasn't too complex, so I was able to get it done within 10 minutes, actually under 10 minutes, so that's gotta be a record of some kind. Okay. What's going on here? I've mentioned in many of my other videos, and of course if you've been reading Dark Horse, especially the revamp, this is going to get more into the revamp, but if you've already gotten through all this on the Comic Fury site, then this is after Rina's powers have erupted, or not Rina, I do that. Why did they make their name so similar? Kana's powers erupted, and she has healed the world from this man-cultivated virus. The viruses, actually, and it's not viri, that's wrong. Like, cacti is right, but viri is wrong, it's viruses. I learned something new today. Not that I've ever said viri, because it sounds weird, but whatever. Okay, so anyhow, she gets saddled with being this figurehead queen of the temporary government that's formed out west. Learn more about that here in this video, iCard. So she becomes a literal poster child for their propaganda, trying to convince and draw other people to their cause. Remember, most of the population has been decimated, so it's becoming important for people to get together and try to form some semblance of civilization. So this is a poster that gets drawn and printed and circulated and eventually makes its way out east, probably all the way to the East Coast eventually, but specifically for our purposes of this story, the Midwest. So in the revamp of Dark Horse, I'm just having this be like a memory flash that Odysseus is having. I call him Yuli, you guys know that. He's thinking back to having seen this poster with his mom. When he meets Kana for the first time, I'm having this kind of be a flash. I want it to be apparent that already people are being led on about Kana and who she is. She looks much older in the poster than she is in reality. And in the first version of this scene, I handled it a lot more comically because I didn't show the events that had taken place up to Odysseus meeting Kana. But considering the changes that I've made in actually showing what happened to him and his mother, and the tone is so much darker in the revamp, I didn't feel the comedic route was appropriate considering the trauma he had just endured. So this was the motivation for changing that scene a little bit. I still wanted to show how she was being portrayed, but instead of having some silly references to his perception of Kana, whereas before, I'll show a picture of what it used to look like. Versus, I can't post what it's going to look like yet because it's not done yet. I already inked it, but I haven't screen toned the page. But instead, I'm just trying to create one poster and having it slapped on a wall, presumably in Chicago. Yes, in Chicago, not even presumably, because that's where he came from. So one thing that I'll be trying to get across, and I may not be able to do this in the Dark Horse story arc, definitely in Seishin when I get to that, but the temporary government has great Word of Wednesday acumen when dealing with how they're presenting Kana. They're very shrewd about this. On one hand, they do want her to, they definitely want her to play on people's emotions, so she's supposed to look, a little playful, hopeful, a little innocent, but also hinting at more I mean, it is a drawing. You know, she looks very energetic and young, but like she knows a little more, she's winking. So it's kind of a weird thing that society has done, because they've taken her and the people have kind of made her more out to be like this Madonna figure, because she has healed so many people, and they figure out that she's the one who did it. But at least for the propaganda, they want to appeal to a wide spectrum of people to persuade them to come and help. And not everyone is necessarily religious and, has this whole iconic, thing where they idealize a person. Some people, they idealize them in other ways. So they're trying to have her capture as much of the spectrum of interest as possible. Doesn't always work, but they are trying to draw people out there and persuade them to come and help rebuild the government. The key here is that under normal circumstances in the 90s and now early 2000s within the story, the country would never have entertained splitting, which is what has essentially ended up happening, although there's the caveat that this is, supposed to be temporary. But, what's happened with the direness of the situation, the lack of leadership, the banding together of some amoral groups, we've still got the faction running around, and there are other people who are not necessarily savory characters that are forming their own little groups. There's a lot of people who are outside the coastal states that, that they're trying to change those people's minds on this and draw them in and kind of go along with leaving the country in order to rebuild it and fix the problems and just kind of start things over again. And we'll see moving forward with the revamp that Orgonia, like I mentioned, they're claiming, at least at this time, stressing almost that this is a temporary thing and that it's okay, and supported by the innocent magical healing girl who saved us all. So it's kind of crazy sounding, but there were so many witnesses, and people want to believe in miracles, especially people who are under so much duress from this oppressive state of existence, this lack of civilization, the need to survive. When you're out in the Midwest, we have some pretty harsh winters. Out in Oregon, the weather is more temperate, not just Oregon, but, the coastal area at large. And so it's kind of trying to do the best they can to kind of pack more people together so that they could rebuild society and maybe start growing food again and supplying it to the places where, it's a lot harder in the winter to survive without food. So there are good reasons why this temporary government's doing it. They do have good intentions, but we all know the road to hell is paved with good intentions, so there's also a little more going on than just the good intentions, because we know how human nature is, we know how people. Most of this, at least in Dark Horse, is going to be implied with little things like this, and I'm going to have a little scene with Kanna dealing with the government in Act 4 of the revamp. However, when we do get to Seishin, which is so far off, it'll be on the normal timeline, and I'm going to delve more into society's reaction to the plague, the war, and of course, the reintroduction of the Fae into modern humanity. So I think that about covers it for this week. I think that's enough to talk about. I just wanted to kind of talk about this picture here. It's only going to be like a teeny tiny part of the page, but I'm going to share it with my patrons over on Patreon, give them like a color sheet and stuff, so it'll be some extra work for them. Whatever you want to do. But if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like and subscribe, do the bell thing. All the support links and stuff, coffee and all that's down below if you would like to contribute, but there's no pressure for that. Oh, and the question of the week. Oh gosh, I almost forgot. This is kind of a weird one, but what do you think about propaganda posters? What do you think the pros and cons of them are? I mean, people say they don't like them, but gosh, there's some awfully awesome artwork on some of them. Some of ours in the US. I personally like the aesthetic of some of the old Soviet posters. I don't like necessarily what they stood for, but I mean, the artwork was really cool. What are your thoughts on it? Is there anything good to take away? Is it all bad? Can we gain anything? Is this question way too deep for a silly free webcomic? Share your thoughts below. Thanks for joining me, folks. Peace and love. Fare you well, and keep on trucking.